You tested out as an inconsistent performer. That's actually the second largest of the four groups. You are not lazy. Let's get that clear immediately. You start strong. You get clear, you get motivated, you take action, but then something shifts and the follow through just doesn't match the start. Momentum fades, focus scatters, and your execution, as you know, becomes inconsistent. Not because you don't care, you do care, but because consistency is not stabilized in your system. And over time, that creates a pattern. For years, we've heard from people that test as inconsistent performer. We hear them say this all the time. I know what to do, I just don't stay consistent. Now listen to me carefully. This is not a discipline problem. This is a behavioral alignment problem. And when I first began studying this stuff, 22, 23 years ago, I went deep into behavioral science, ancient wisdoms, and of course, performance psychology. And what became clear is this. When people operate inconsistently, it usually comes down to three internal breakdowns. One, they start too many things at once. Sound familiar? Two, they shift priorities based on how they feel, their emotion. And three, this is key, they overvalue starting instead of finishing, which means energy gets fragmented, and that means execution never really compounds. But here's what most people miss. This is good. You ready? This is actually a learned behavior. It is not your identity. And more good news, okay? It's not permanent, and science backs this up. In a 25-year NASA-linked study, Dr. George Land discovered something extraordinary. When testing adults, he rarely found the creative geniuses NASA was looking for. That's what Land was hired for. So he began testing younger and younger and younger age groups. And here's a mind blower, it's a shocker. 98% of 5-year-olds tested at the level of creative genius. But when those same individuals were tested 25 years later, sadly, only 2% tested at genius. Not because capability disappeared, but because conditioning trained it down through institutions and schools. And renowned behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner, I love Skinner, who is rightfully considered at least the equal of Freud and Jung, he confirmed the same thing Land had discovered. What was that? That behavior is shaped by environment, repetition, and reinforcement. Sound like school? So that drive, that ambition you have, that capability, that genius, it didn't disappear. It's really still in you. Both concluded the same thing. Here's their conclusion. The genius isn't lost. It was conditioned down, and they proved that it actually started in school. How? Well, think about it. We were trained to what? Follow instead of learning how to think for ourselves. Trained to comply instead of developing our individuality and our gifts. And the worst thing is trained to compete instead of collaborating and creating. And over time, we move further and further away from how we naturally think, create, and operate. But here's the empowering part. You did not stop creating your life. You've been creating it all along. You already have an internal automated manifesting mechanism that turns your thoughts into results. That's why all that stuff all over social media about learning how to manifest, it's total nonsense. It's bullshit. You've been manifesting perfectly since your early teens. See, your thoughts shape your habits, and you know what's coming next. Habits shape actions, and actions what? Dictate results. So this isn't about learning how to create. It's about learning how to create intentionally. And for the inconsistent performer like you, changes everything. Why? Because your problem is not lack of potential. It's unstable execution. You create momentum, but don't sustain it long enough for your life to compound that early momentum. And that's exactly why the restart loop, right, that the inconsistent performers have, must be broken so you can replace those resolutions that always fail into authentic transformation. Because the subconscious mind ultimately reinforces whatever pattern is repeated the most, even when the pattern is self-sabotage, like starting strong, determined, fading. Starting strong, determined, fading. Then starting strong. Well, you get the idea because you've lived that and you've lived the frustration that it carries. The restart loop is standard operating procedure for people like you that test as inconsistent performer. And until that loop is interrupted, you will continue something not so great, right? Confusing new beginnings with real transformation.
I was constantly starting things and never following through. For the first time in years, I feel focused, clear, and actually finishing what I begin.
Now here's what gets fascinating, okay? And everything shifts. Across ancient wisdom traditions dating back over 5,000 years, there's a recurring symbolic idea that appears across all cultures and all continents. The original was Jinn, a Jinn, one of the earliest recorded descriptions of a wish-granting force, sort of a trickster god. And over time, that same symbolic pattern evolved into many names, and you can see easily how Jinn, Jinn, went to genie in a bottle, and eventually the story of Aladdin and the magic lamp. Now, stay with me here, because this was never about magic, and no, this isn't some woo-woo stuff, okay? And they weren't written as fairy tales to entertain children. The reason this story, in many forms, has survived thousands of years across all civilizations and every continent is because it was always a metaphor for the remarkable subconscious mind. In other words, the creative genius that Dr. Land discovered that we all have. A force beneath the conscious thought that responds to what? Repeated instruction. And the ancients understood something modern psychology now confirms. They call it neuroscience. Of course, they're trying to take credit for it. You see, the subconscious mind ultimately reinforces whatever pattern is repeated the most. And even when that pattern is self-sabotage, until that pattern is interrupted, people continue repeating what? Emotional cycles, behavior loops, and identity patterns, like the inconsistent performer, without actually realizing they are being conditioned by their own repetitious behavior. And that's exactly why the ancients didn't just leave stories. They actually left the instructions. The instructions, abracadabra. What popped into your head just then? Magic? A magician? Maybe the great song by Steve Miller. Well, it was never about magic. Abracadabra were the instructions to train that creative genius discovered by Dr. Land that's in every one of us. Here's what it really means, dating back to 2450 BC. 2 words. Abra, I create. Cadabra, as I speak. Meaning your internal dialogue is constantly what? Programming your subconscious mind. And that subconscious direction shapes your behavior and, of course, your habits, your execution, and ultimately what? The results. Now, inside the best-selling book, Standing Tall, now published in 3 languages, kind of surprised me, you'll discover the 7 ancient verities. Now, verity actually means truth. Truth doesn't change. And when you align with truth, your performance becomes stable, effortlessly reliable. Now, these ancient verities are not motivational ideas. They're conditioning interrupters, patterns of thought and action designed to interrupt, that restart loop, replace destructive conditioning, and retrain the subconscious mind toward execution that compounds. You see, repetition and reinforcement created the old pattern, and repetition and positive reinforcement is what's going to rewire it. And for the inconsistent performer, that rewiring becomes absolutely critical, because inconsistency is not caused by a lack of ambition. It's caused by fragmented focus, emotional attachment, and unstable execution. So, yes, we spend 2 weeks with each one of the short verities, and that repetition and positive reinforcement rewires your subconscious mind. And while all 7 verities create new habits, Verity 4 becomes very powerful for you. Verity 4 is action focused and attachment free. You'll actually retrain your subconscious, and you will experience focused execution, taking action without hesitation. You'll finish what you start because of that verity. Detach from the outcome, opinions, and all the freaking emotional noise that's out there, because inconsistency dies when execution becomes clean. And then Verity 5, you're going to love this. Verity 5 is first things first. You'll rewire your subconscious to keep first things first, no longer rearranging priorities based on emotion. You stop chasing whatever feels urgent at the moment, and you start operating from your heart's desire, primary objective, and your core motive. I'll tell you a little bit more about your core motive in a minute. But most importantly, because of Verity 5, you'll complete what you start. Because consistency is not about doing more. It's about finishing what actually matters.
This helped me stop overthinking and finally stay consistent long enough to see results.
Now, here's what makes this experience of working with us real transformation instead of information that you get like out of a self-help book that never plays out in life. Once you get started, you'll complete a short assessment, and that allows us to generate a full 27-page color code profile on you. And through that profile, you'll discover your core motive that I just mentioned, okay? Not just how you behave, but why you behave that way. See, most personality systems measure behavior, and most of them are pretty good. But color code goes way deeper. It measures your core motive, that internal driver behind your decisions, energy patterns, focus shifts, execution habits, your relationships. You know, let's be clear here. Most people spend years trying to fix behaviors without ever understanding what's really driving them. And once we understand your motive, everything becomes far more precise. And this is where most programs fail. They give you information, but no personalization. That's why when you enroll, you also receive a private one-on-one strategy session with me so we can review the results together. Go through the full 27-page color code breakdown. I'll help you identify your strengths, your blind spots, your growth patterns, and together we'll build a customized acceleration plan based on your type, your goals, your lifestyle, your business, maybe your leadership challenges if you have them, but most importantly, the current season of your life, because consistency and compounding momentum happens faster when the strategy is built specifically for you. Not generic advice, a personalized roadmap.
This didn't just help me get organized, it changed how I show up in my business, my marriage, and my daily life. I finally trust myself again.
For over 15 years, we've been doing this, helping people break patterns successfully, and we've helped more than 4,000 people do that. So this is not theory for us. It was developed, tested, refined, a lot of trial and success, perfected, and now it's proven. So now inside the Standing Tall members area, you receive an instant download of the bestseller Standing Tall, your 7 Ancient Verities workbook to reinforce your new daily habits, develop that consistency, your color code profile. You also get your behavioral pattern breakdown. That's a thrill. Your execution alignment framework. Now, once you fill out a short survey so I understand more about your hopes and goals, you'll then have access to my calendar for your one-on-one appointment. And after that one-on-one appointment, you have structured guidance to move from inconsistency into stable execution. Plus, you're supported with 2 live Zoom mastermind sessions every month. You're not going to be doing this alone, okay? That's one of the problems. See, Napoleon Hill of Think Grow Rich fame said, "No one achieves lasting success without a mastermind alliance." So twice a month, we come together on Zoom to keep you aligned, to keep you accountable, and more importantly, to keep you executing consistency. Because accountability is what stabilizes performance. Now, I want to be really clear here. This is not motivation. This is execution architecture for you. If you're ready to break the restart loop, just click below. Go through Standing Tall. Get your color code profile. Fill out the survey and book your one-on-one session with me. And begin building consistency that compounds. You deserve that. You don't fix inconsistency by trying harder. You already know that. You fix it by becoming aligned and structured. And once that happens, you stop restarting your life and you actually start building it. So hit the link. I'll see you on the inside. Peace be the journey.